Alrighty guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. So today we're going to be talking about all about greatest common factor. So before we go ahead and get started, take a look at all of these pictures. What do all of these pictures have in common? Yep. Well, I'm sure you came up with a number of things that all of these pictures have in common, but one thing is for sure, all of these things have the number 3 in common. Okay, let's try another one. What do all of these things have in common? Okay, you probably said that all of these things have the number 4 in common. Okay, um, and so, yeah, so just keeping this idea of things that terms or pictures or just items have in common is going to be helpful for our lesson today. So let's go ahead and keep that question. So what do the terms in this expression have in common? Okay. So hopefully you notice that both of these terms have a triangle in common, right? Now, if I go ahead and take that triangle out of the expression, I'm left with 5 minus 6 square, right? That triangle just came on out here, and then inside the parentheses is what's left over. So this was what both of those terms had in common. And this inside the parentheses is what was left over, right? Okay, let's try another one. What do the terms in this expression have in common? Okay, hopefully you saw that both of these have a heart in common. And so if we go ahead and take that heart out, we're going to go ahead and say that this was the thing that they have in common. And then what's left over? So this first term had heart squared. So I only took 1 out. So I'm really left with 5 heart minus 1 because there's no squared here and there's just 1 there. So remember, this is the stuff that's left over. Okay, so now in both of these expressions, with the triangle and the heart, we took out the greatest common factor. Now, the greatest common factor, or GCF, that's exactly what greatest common factor stands for, right? Is GCF. And then what does it do? It's the biggest factor that divides. Notice divides is highlighted, okay? Divides 2 or more numbers. So for here, we're going to find the GCF, or the greatest common factor of each expression, and then we're going to factor it. So for number 1, the greatest common factor here is going to be, I see a 6x and a 3. I can divide both of those things by 3. So that's my greatest common factor, okay? So then what I'm going to do is divide that out. So I have 6x minus 3, that was the original expression, and I'm dividing both of those things by 3, okay? So remember, the greatest common factor is going to come out here. This is your GCF. And what's left over is going to go inside your parentheses. So 6x divided by 3 is going to be 2x. And then 3 divided by 3 is going to be 1. So remember, this was what was left over after you took out the greatest common factor. So your final expression, your final expression is 3 times 2x minus 1. Okay, let's go ahead and repeat that. So we have 18d minus 30. So again, we're going to look for our greatest common factor. What is the biggest number that I can divide both 18 and 30 by? Okay, some people would say that I can divide that by 2. But there is a bigger number. Remember, we want the biggest number that I can divide both 18 and 30 by. So 2 really wouldn't work because it's not the greatest. It's not the biggest. So the greatest common factor for both of these is going to be 6. So I like to go ahead and rewrite my expression. And I'm going to divide both of these things by 6. Now remember, the greatest common factor is going to come outside. It's not just going to go away. And what's left over is going to go inside your parentheses. So 18d divided by 6 is going to be 3d. And then 30 divided by 6 is going to be 5. So then your final expression is 6 times 3d minus 5. Okay, let's go ahead and follow that same process for number 3. So greatest common factor. So this one's going to be a little different because I've got numbers and I've got variables in both of my terms. So let's first figure out the number. What's the greatest common factor that I can divide 10 and 6 by? And the answer is 2. Now we need to look at our variables. What is the how many x's total can I take out? Some people would say that I can take out x squared. So that means I would take out 2 x's, but the problem with that is that over here I only have 1 x. I don't have enough x's to take out. Okay, so the biggest or the most number of x's that I can take out is just 1. So my greatest common factor is 2x, okay? So I have 10x minus 6x squared, and I'm going to divide both of those things by my greatest common factor. So I have 2x, okay? That sign is going to come down for the ride. So now 10x divided by 2x. Well, my x's cancel out, so I'm not going to be left with any x's. And then 10 divided by 2 is 5. And then over here, 6x squared divided by 2x. Well, I've got an x on the bottom and then an x on top. 2 x's on top, so that means only one is going to cancel out, and I'm left with x. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay, now just so that you guys are reminded, the reason why 6x squared and 2x simplifies down to 3x is because if I expand this, I really have 6 times x on top and 2x on the bottom. So that means these go away, and 2 divided by 2 is 1, 6 divided by 2 is 3, so that's where this 3x comes from, okay? So then your final answer is going to be 2x times 5 minus 3x. Okay, now you try. I want you guys to find the greatest common factor and factor each expression. Hit pause on this video, and when you come back, we'll go over the solutions. Alrighty, welcome back. So now we're going to go over each of the solutions. And here are your answers. So for number 1, the greatest common factor was 4. So I'm going to divide both of those terms by 4. So 4y divided by 4 is just y. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and then the greatest common factor is going to come outside your parentheses, okay? For number 2, the greatest common factor is 7, so I'm going to divide both of the terms in that expression by 7, so 35x divided by 7 is 5x, and then 56 divided by 7 is 8x, and then the greatest common factor is going to come right in front. And then for number 3, the greatest common factor here is 6v. Okay, that looks like the number 3 that we did together. You can take out a 6 and a v from both of those, okay? So 12v squared divided by 6v, that gets you 2v. And then 18v divided by 6v, that's 3. Okay, so your final expression is 6v out here, which is the greatest common factor, times 2v plus 3. All right, guys, we're going to do one more example together. So now for numbers 1 and 2, we're going to find the greatest common factor and factor it. We're going to factor again if we can, and we're going to solve for x. So for number 1, I can take out a 2 out of both of those. The greatest common factor is 2. So I have 2x squared minus 50, and I'm going to divide both of those things by 2. So I have 2 x squared minus 25 equals 0. Now, the instructions tell me to factor again, and if I look inside my parentheses, this is difference of squares. That's what our last video was on. So I'm going to go ahead and factor that. So that becomes 2. Now, inside my parentheses, I'm going to write x minus 5 and x plus 5 because that's following the structure of the difference of squares. Okay, and then the third step in those instructions tell us to solve for x. So now I'm going to use the zero product property. So from here to here, I used difference of squares. And now we're going to use the zero product property. That's what ZPP stands for. So x minus 5 equals 0, and then x plus 5 equals 0. Set each of those terms equal to 0. Add 5 to both sides here. And I'm left with x equals 5. And then over here, I'm going to subtract 5 on both sides. So I end up with x equals negative 5. So those are my solutions for x. All right, we're going to try that one more time for number 2. So first step is find the greatest common factor. So I can divide both 3x squared and 27 by the number 3. Then I'm going to go ahead and factor that out. So that means I'm going to divide both of these terms by 3. That's going to come out here. Okay, 3x squared divided by 3 is x squared. 27 divided by 3 is 9. Okay, and look at that. I've got another difference of squares. So I'm going to take this. This is your difference of squares, and I'm going to factor it again. This 3 is going to keep coming down. Difference of squares, we're going to follow that structure. So it's going to be x minus 3 and x plus 3 equals 0. Then we want to use the zero product property. So we're going to use both of these things and use the zero product property to help us figure out what x should be. So I set x minus 3 equal to 0 and solve. So one of my solutions is x equals 3. Then I set my other term, x plus 3 equal to 0, and solve there. And my solution is x equals negative 3. Okay, those are my two solutions. All right, guys, it's your turn. Follow the same steps. So find the greatest common factor, factor it out, factor again if you need to, and solve for x. Hit pause, and when you come back, we'll go over the solutions. Alrighty, guys, so hopefully you had time to go over that. So here are the solutions. So my greatest common factor is 4. Okay, so I'm going to divide both of those terms by 4. And when I do that, 4x squared divided by 4 is x squared. 36 divided by 4 is 9. Now over here, I've got difference of squares. So x squared minus 9, we're going to use difference of squares, and that becomes x minus 3 and x plus 3. And then we use the zero product property to help us solve for x. And so then that becomes x minus 3 equals 0 and x plus 3 equals 0. Solve for both. And here are your solutions. And you're done. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below.